teachers, and my colleagues later equipments, applications, and pitfalls. I'm a fellow in Sterling Hospital, Rajkot, and I'm guided by Dr. Hitak Adera sir. Now, in this topic, I'll be covering history, what is peripheral nerve stimulator, neurophysiology and electrophysiology, clinical use, advantages and disadvantages. Coming on to the history, in 1780, Mickey Gallman was the first person to describe the effect of electrical neuromuscular stimulation in Freud's pen. In 1909, Louis Capicchi was the first French physiologist to study electrical nerve stimulation. In 1912, Perthes was the first person to perform nerve blocks by PNS. Before that, the blocks were performed by dissecting the nerves directly and instilling the drugs into that. In 1955, Pearson introduced the concept of insulated needles for the nerve location. In 1962, Greenblatt and Denson introduced portable solid-state nerve stimulator with variable current output and described its use for nerve location. In 1973, Montgomery et al. Demonstrated non-insulated needles that require higher current than insulated needles. Ford et al. In 1984 reported the lack of accuracy with non-insulated needles once the needle can pass the nerve, and suggested the use of nerve stimulator with a constant current based on the comparison of the electrical characteristic of peripheral nerve stimulator. In 2004, Hadzik and Volga defined electrical characteristic and suggested manufacturing of modern nerve stimulators. What is peripheral nerve stimulator? It is a method of using low intensity current up to 5 milliampere with a short duration pulse width of 0.05 to 1 millisecond and an electrical stimulus frequency of 1 to 2 Hz. It helps in recognizing an intraneural or intravascular needle placement and prevents its further advancement and reduces the risk of nerve injury. It can be used as a single injection technique, continuous nerve block for the insertion of the continuous nerve block catheters, and also as a part of dual monitoring, that is the use of ultrasound along with the peripheral nerve stimulator. And it has become a basis for the medico-legal aspect. Now coming on to the neurophysiology and electrophysiology. Now there are some definitions that we need to look upon. Resting membrane potential is a potential difference across a cell membrane without any stimulation. For nerves, it is minus 70 millivolts, and for muscle, it is minus 90 millivolts. Now the action potential is defined as a spontaneous depolarization of an excitable cell in response to a stimulus, or it can be also defined as decrease in the resting membrane potential from minus 90 to minus 55 millivolts. A membrane potential is defined as difference in electrical potential between the inside and outside of the cell. Now here, as you can see, once the stimulus starts, the rapid change in the voltage or the action potential starts. Then there is depolarization, that is because of the opening of the sodium channels, there is influx of the sodium ions. Once the depolarization is done, there is membrane repolarization where the sodium channels get inactivated and there is activation of the potassium channels, which causes the efflux of potassium ions. In hyperpolarization, which is a lowered membrane potential, it is mainly because of the efflux of the potassium ions and the closing of the potassium channels. Then it comes to the resting state, that is the membrane potential returns to the resting voltage that occurred before the stimulus, which has occurred. Now coming on to the types of fibers, which can be differentiated on the basis of the diameter and degree of myelination. So the diameter of motor fibers are larger as compared to the pain fibers and the sensory fibers. And the motor fibers are myelinated to its highest as compared to the sensory fibers, which are less myelinated, and C fibers are unmyelinated. Now the speed of propagation of impulse and threshold of excitability, they both determine the electrophysiologic behavior of the nerve. The speed of impulse propagation is faster for motor fibers as compared to pain fibers, and the threshold for the electrical stimulation is low for the motor fibers, and for pain fibers it's high. And the chronicity of the motor fibers is less as compared to the pain fibers, which is low. As you can see in the picture, the first picture, the motor fibers have shorter chronicity because of the relatively low capacitance of the myelinated membrane, And here only the node of the Ranvier will count. That is, the impulse will jump from the one node of Ranvier to the other. And so only they'll require only less time to depolarize the membrane up to the threshold level. Whereas this is the uh, this is for the pain fibers, where the pain fibers have longer chronaxy because of the higher capacitance of the non-myelinated membrane, and so they take longer time to reach up to the threshold level. The shorter impulse, which would not be able to, if we give shorter impulses, it would not be able to depolarize the membrane below the threshold level. Now here, as you can see, this is a motor fiber which is myelinated, and this is the node of Ranvier. So this is the place where the ion exchanges occur and produce the solitary conduction. That is, the impulse will jump from one node to another. This is a diagram of the pain fiber who has a shorter chronaxy. Here they are not myelinated, and there is a low speed of the impulse propagation as compared to the pain fibers who has a high speed of impulse propagation. Now coming on to the current intensity, it is a measure of the stimulus strength. So here it means the flow it is a flow of electrical charge which is used to depolarize a nerve and produce a motor response. So here the total charge applied to excite a nerve is equal to the product of the intensity of the current applied and the duration to which it is applied. So according to the Ohm's law, which describes the relationship between voltage, resistance, and current, according to this equation shown here, it means at a given voltage, the current changes with the resistance. So for nerve stimulation to be performed, we need a constant current. So that is done by the voltage to the varying degree of resistance. That is, the voltage has to adapt to the different resistance produced by the entire circuit. So here the voltage might increase or decrease to produce a constant current to the different changing resistance. And this resistance will be produced by the needle tip, electrode to skin interface, and the tissue layers. Now, this constant current, which is produced by the PMS by raising or lowering the voltage in response to the change in resistance. This relationship is explained by the stimulus strength relation curve. That is, in the picture, you can see the red line is for the motor fiber, and this is for the pain fiber. Now, Rho base is defined as a minimal current intensity of infinite duration required to produce an action potential, and a current below Rho base will not generate any motor response or depolarize it. So this is the Rho base for the motor fibers, and this is the Rho base for the sensory fibers. Chronaxy is defined as the minimal duration of the pulse during which is required to depolarize a nerve, which is twice that of the Rho base. So this is the chronaxy of the motor fibers, and this is the chronaxy of the sensory fibers, which is that of twice of Rho base. Now, chronaxy of the nerves will be different, but the Rho base remains the same. And it also provides an indicator for the excitability of the nerve. And chronaxy is inversely proportional to the fiber size and the thickness of the stimulation. So more diameter fiber will have less chronaxy, and so they will be easily stimulated. Whereas a small diameter fiber will have more chronaxy, and so they will be difficult to get stimulated. Here, the chronaxy of A alpha fiber is 0.05 to 0.1 millisecond, and for A delta fiber, it is 0.150 millisecond. For C fibers, which transmits slow pain and it's unmyelinated, the chronaxy is 0.4 millisecond. Now, while performing a nerve block, patient won't feel pain during the block, except when the needle pierces the skin or touching the nerve, or when the needle has gone intranuclear. So it's mainly because the myelinated or the motor fibers have shorter chronaxis compared to C fibers, so they get easily stimulated with a low amplitude current and a shorter pulse width duration. So they require lesser energy. So only motor fibers are stimulated as compared to the C fibers. So while performing a nerve block, we only stimulate motor nerve and not the sensory nerve, so patient won't feel pain while performing a nerve block. So frequency is defined as a number of stimulus applied every second. So the most common frequencies are used between 1 to 2 hertz, which is optimal for any localization of nerve. 3 hertz are also used. Now 1 hertz is used when we have to avoid any muscular pain or discomfort to the patient. The disadvantage of using 1 hertz frequency is that it should be advanced very slowly because there are high chances that we would miss the nerve. 2 hertz is most commonly used because the needle advancement or the needle manipulation will be easier as compared to 1 hertz. Now, if we use higher frequencies, there will be more discomfort to the patient, and low frequencies you have the risk of the nerve injury. Now, pulse width is defined as the duration of time to which the current intensity is applied. It depends upon the chronaxy of the nerve which has to be stimulated. Now, a shorter pulse width of 100 to 200 microseconds corresponds to the chronaxy of the A alpha fibers and is more suitable for the nerve stimulation. Longer pulse width, now the longer pulse width is used to elicit paresthesia in awake patients to block the sensory nerves like the subcutaneous nerve or the lateral femoral cubitus. Whereas, and it's also used to use in patients with diabetic neuropathy and polyp. Now, pulse width has also role in successful use of epidural stimulation test or SWE test. Now, in this table, the different pulse width and the threshold ranges are used and its application are there. For 4.1 millisecond of pulse width with a current amplitude of not less than 0.3 milliamperes in the motor peripheral nerve. With a current intensity of 1 to 15 milliampere of not less than 1 milliampere with a pulse width of 0.2 milliseconds, they are used in epidural space, intrathecal space, whereas the current intensity of 6 milliampere and a pulse width of 1 millisecond are used in epidural space. Now, the quality of the stimulation is mainly defined by the polarity and the type of the electrode, the distance between the needle and the nerve, and the impedance, that is the interaction at the tissue needle interface. Now, the electrical polarity is defined as a directional flow of the electrons from the negative pole towards the positive pole. Here, in the circuit, the negative pole, that is the cathode, is connected to the stimulating electrode of the needle, which is black in color, and anode is connected to the skin, which is red in color. Now here, the stimulation should be done only by the cathode. So if we are using cathode for the stimulation, we require very less current to stimulate the nerve. That means the negative current which flows from the cathode will reduce the voltage around the voltage gradient around this membrane and will produce depolarization and also generate an action potential. And so it's easier to stimulate nerve and there is less discomfort to the patient as current required is also very less. So as you can see here in the picture, if we use cathode as a stimulating electrode, there is depolarization. And if we use anode as a to stimulate a nerve, there is hyperpolarization at which is adjacent to the tip of the needle, and depolarization is still going. So you can see here the motor response is produced. There is no motor response. Now in the next picture, this is a circuit where this is a peripheral nerve stimulator hexagon. Here the red color is connected, should be connected to the patient. Here the black color, which is cathode, should be connected to the needle. The anode, which is positive electrode, should be connected to the patient. Now coming on to the current distance relationship, it's a relationship between the threshold current and the distance from the nerve, which is governed by the Coulomb's law or the inverse square. Here, the greater I is the current required, the smaller I is the minimal current from the needle tip, and R is the distance from. So this the current intensity which is required, the threshold current intensity which is required, is inversely proportional to the square of the distance. The main principle here is to calculate the distance from the needle to nerve using a constant current stimulus. So if the needle is too far away from the nerve, a higher current is required, which is painful to the patient. If the nerve is stimulated with a very low threshold current, then it indicates that the needle tip is very close to the nerve. And if a motor response is okay with a low with a current amplitude of less than 0.2 milliampere, then there is strong chances that the needle is inside the epithelium. As you can see in the first picture, the needle is far away from the nerve, and a high current and a high stimulus current will produce a weak motor response. In the second picture, the stimulating needle close to the nerve and a high current stimulus is given will produce a strong motor response. Whereas the third picture, here the needle is close to the nerve, but a low stimulus current is given to produce a motor response. Here, the motor response produces the weak. Now coming on to the impedance or the complex resistance. So it is the resistance of the nerve stimulator, needle, tissue characteristic of the patient, and the grounding electrodes and the cables. Now this impedance will depend upon the frequency content of the stimulus. Now the major impact is mainly formed by the needle tip and the electrode in the skin impedance. Now the resistance of the needle tip will depend upon the geometry and the insulation of the needle tip, whereas the electrode to skin resistance will depend upon the type and hydration status of the skin and quality of the ECG electrode. So the shorter the impulse used, higher will be the frequency content, and so lower will be the impedance. Whereas longer will be the impulse, lower will be the frequency content, and higher will be the impedance. That is the resistance of the circuit. So the nerve stimulator, by producing constant current, is required to compensate for the different resistance or the impedance produced by the circuit, which is done by varying degree of by increasing or decreasing the voltage. Now this nerve stimulator differs from the neuromuscular monitor, where we use a higher current intensity, that is supramaximum stimulus, to assess the degree of neuromuscular block. Now these are the components of the peripheral nerve stimulator. Here is the clock reference. We have this microcontroller, the display, and the controls here. Now the clock reference is a synchronizing mechanism. That is, it synchronizes the current with the stimulus. It has a crystal. It is a crystal oscillator which will produce a very accurate and high frequency clock signals, and this clock signals will send input to the microcontroller, and thus they control all the functions. Now coming on to the microcontroller, which is considered as a brain of the nerve stimulator. So this nerve stimulator basically runs on a battery. So low battery powered are preferred. Now this microcontroller will receive the input from the control, and this will help change the value of the current, frequency, and the pulse width. It relays the set value to the display so that the user gets aware of the new set. Then we have a constant current generator. It is an our idle current generator does not exist, as the current must be same to the varying degree of resistance. So this is achieved by generating progressively higher voltage output as the impedance between the electrodes is increased. Then we have the current reference generator. It is based upon the voltage and a low tolerance digital potentiometer. Now it changes resistance over its entire range, and it is controlled by a microcontroller. It uses a series of commands which tell to increase or decrease the value. So a 10-bit potentiometer giving 1024 steps is sufficient for the application. Now the display, which is LCD or LED in time, it shows the set value of current, frequency, pulse width, and low battery level and probe disconnection. In newer machines, it also shows display current impedance in kilo ohms. There should be a clear digital display of accuracy to 2 decimal places, which is one of the important features of the nerve stimulator, and it should also display an actual current delivered to the patient and not simply the set value of the current settings. It should also have it should be also equipped with a low and a high output ranges, as the low output ranges are used to alert the operator if there is any potential nerve damage or intra-defibrillator placement, and high ranges from 1 to 10 milliampere they are used for the epidural stimulation test. Coming on to the control, the three sets of control on nerve stimulator, that is current, frequency, and pulse width. They may be of analog or digital type, and each control increases or decreases the value of the control parameter. So you can see here the newer machines have an hand controller and foot pedals, which allows the operator to perform the block independently. Now, as you can see here in the picture, the yellow box shows the stimulus amplitude. The orange box shows here the pulse width in milliseconds. The red box shows here the frequency in hertz, and the blue box shows here the impedance in kiloohms. You can get it in Pageant and in Vibron machine. Now, coming on to the desirable properties of the electrical nerve stimulator. The first is a shorter pulse width. It has two advantages. As the motor fibers have shorter frequency, they will get stimulated to the shorter pulse width, and so only motor fibers are stimulated and not the sensory fibers. So less discomfort to the patient and more pain while performing on block. The second reason is the shorter pulse width is superior to the longer in estimating the needle nerve distance. Then there should be a square wave current, that is the abrupt rise and fall, as a slow rising current will cause accommodation. So the abrupt rise and fall, that is a square wave current, is more beneficial than the slow rising current. Then there should be a preferential cathode stimulation, that is, cathode should be used as a stimulating electrode which is connected to a needle depolarizer nerve rather than an anode. Then a constant current generator is used, not the fixed, which is one of the most important feature of the peripheral nerve stimulator, as the same current has to, constant current has to be produced with the changing impedances. Then we have frequency. 2 hertz is used better than 1 hertz because the manipulation of needle is much better. Now, there should be an digital or analog dial to control the current, and also there should be an alarm for the disconnection and malfunction of the circuits. Now, coming on to the setup and the checking of the equipment and some important aspects for the successful electrolocalization of the peripheral nerve stimulator. Now, we should use only specifically manufactured nerve stimulator for nerve blocks. Only insulated needles should be used, and we have to use skin electrodes of low impedances, high quality skin electrodes. And before starting any procedure, we should check the functioning of the nerve stimulator and the connecting cables. During the procedure, we should check frequently whether the current is being delivered or if there is any disconnection. The design of the connector should prevent any faulty polarity connection, that only cathode should be used for the stimulating a nerve, not anode. The starting current for superficial block should be 1 milliampere and for deep block should be 1.5. We should while using an ultrasound, the selection of the current should be 0.5 milliampere. So basically, while using ultrasound and PNS together, it allows the operator to get informed whether the needle placement might be inside the nerve or not. Well, now here is a table showing the troubleshooting of PNS. So if the PNS stops working at all, we should check the battery or reset. And you should also refer to the operator manual. If the nerve stimulator suddenly stops working, then we have to check and replace the battery. If no motor response is occurring in spite of the correct placement of the needle, we should check the connectors, skin electrode, cables, stimulating needle for interrupted circuit or any high impedance. We have to check the setting of the amplitude and impulse duration. We should also check stimulator setting if they might have test mode or pause mode, which will prevent the current delivery while performing a block. If the motor response disappears and cannot be regained even after increasing the stimulus amplitude and duration, then we have to check all the above parameters, and also sometimes by mistake if they have injected local anesthetic, such will happen. Now coming on to the the endpoint of nerve stimulation. So the threshold current to get a motor response where you have to inject a drug is considered from 0.2 to 0.3, 0.2 to zero point 0.5 milliampere, that is less than 0.5 milliampere and not less than 0.2 milliampere, because less than 0.2 milliampere will increase the risk of intraneural or fascicular injection. Now here there are some electrical features that it should have an adjustable constant current source with an operating range from 10 kilo ohms minimally output low impedance and ideally at 15 kilo ohms or greater. It should have an adjustable stimulus amplitude of 0 to 5 milliampere. It should have a selectable pulse duration between 0.1 and 1 millisecond, as motor fibers are stimulated more easily with a shorter current duration of 0.1 millisecond, whereas sensory fibers require longer stimulus duration of 1 millisecond. Then the stimulus frequency should be between 1 to 3 hertz, that is 1 to 3 pulses per second. So best is 2 hertz. Then the configuration startup parameters should be there so that the machine will comply with the hospital protocol and to avoid mistakes when multiple users are working with the same device. A display of the circuit impedance is recommended here to allow the operator to check the integrity of the electrical circuit and to detect a potential intraneural intravascular leak. An automatic self-check process should be there for the internal functioning of the unit if there is with a warning message if there is any wrong or disconnection in the circuit. Coming on to the safety features, it should display all the parameters necessary to perform a nerve block. It should clearly identify the output polarity. It should have a meaningful instruction of use. The battery operations of the nerve stimulator as opposed to electrical operation provides intrinsic safety. So there should not, so there is no risk of any electric shock or burns if there is any short circuit in the main supply of the electricity. The maximum energy delivered by a nerve stimulator with 5 milliampere and 95 volt output signal at 1 millisecond impulse duration is only 0.475 millivolts. Now, the combined rates of electrical and transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation should not be used because the transcutaneous measurements, which is used for muscle relaxation measurement, will produce a very high rate, very high energy charge, and very high current. Now, the safety precautions while to avoid any patient discomfort, we should use a low intensity current. We should limit the stimulus energy by limiting the initial current amplitude to 1 milliampere for superficial blocks and 2 to 5 maximum for psoas and sciatic blocks. We should not use longer stimulus duration of more than 1 millisecond. And the drug, that is the local anesthetic, should not be injected at high pressure, that is more than 15 psi, the opening injection pressure. And the cables and the connectors should be insulated, and safety connectors should be there to prevent the leakage of any current. Now, coming on to the needles for the single shot nerve blocks, there are different types of needles for the peripheral nerve blocks. Insulated needles are most commonly used. While using, if you are using only ultrasound, ecogenic needles have now come for the better visualization. Now, the commercially available needles for the single shot nerve blocks, they come with a pre-attached extension tubing to facilitate aspiration of the drug or 5% dextrose, and a female attachment for the connection to the nerve stimulator is also present. Now, sometimes the lure lock attached to the tubing will be used, so that has to be checked before injecting any drug. Now, the needle tip design. A nerve injury can be caused by the direct penetration or forceful needle-nerve contact. So the bevel of the needle can have impact on the extent of the damage on the needle insertion, which is close to the nerve. So there are short bevel needles and long bevel needles. The advantage of short bevel needle is they reduce the nerve injury, whereas long bevel needles have shown to be likely to penetrate perineurium and cause vascular injury. Now here, blunt non-cutting needle, Tuhi needle, are used to feel the pop while entering the fascia, whereas pencil point and Tuhi's needle can cause greater post-traumatic inflammation, myelin damage, and intraneural hematoma. Now, if the needle is too blunt, which will this will hinder in the facial puncture and will result in higher pressure applied, and this will cause cause the potential overshooting after puncture in the fascia. Now the needle tip design, as you can see here, we have a short bevel needle and a long bevel needle. So short bevel Scotty Quickies needle are used for single shot injection, and Quickies needle are mainly for the continuous injection. Now the stimulating needle, they should be fully insulated. They should have a fully insulated needle cup and the shaft to avoid any current leakage. And depth markings should be there for easy identification and documentation of the needle depth. As you can see here, these are the imaging needles while using both peripheral nerve stimulator and ultrasound. Coming on to the length of the needle. So the choice of the needle length will depend upon the which block is performed. For deeper blocks, we require longer needles of 100 to 120 mm, and shorter needles are required to perform the superficial runs. Now the problem with the shorter needles are they may not reach the target site, whereas the longer needles they may get advanced too deeply. Here the needle should have the depth markings for the monitoring of the depth of penetration information. And the correct needle length the shortest possible should be allowed for better visualization and manipulation. Here you can see the needles are having the centimeter markings which can be used to monitor the depth of penetration. 22 gauge needles are most commonly used for the single shot peripheral nerve blocks. Now the longer needles will bend more easily as compared to the shorter needles. So here to perform any deep block we need to use a longer needle with a larger gauge instead of a smaller gauge needle, which will lack rigidity and will get bent more easily. Now, the larger gauge needles, they should be used with caution because they are associated with the risk of tissue injury and hematoma formation. Whereas the smaller gauge needles will carry more serious risk of the tip getting inside the fascicular area. Now, the smaller gauge needle have a problem of resistance, that is increased resistance of injection. So, if by chance the needle is inside the intravascular structure, it will take longer time to aspirate the blood back. As you can see in the picture, there are two needles, insulated and non-insulated. In insulated needle, they are coated with a layer of Teflon and silicone except at the tip, and insulated needles. Here, the current focuses only at the tip, so no amount of the current is required to stimulate the nerve. So, smaller the conductive area for the current flow, the higher will be the current density. So, the insulated needles can be used with a pulse duration of 0.2 to 0.5 seconds, and here there is a higher success rate as compared to the uninsulated needle, where they are not coated with any layer and the current flows throughout the length of the needle, and thus they have a larger conducting area, and so a larger amount of current is required to stimulate a nerve, and this will produce discomfort to the patient. As you can see it in the picture, in the first picture, the needle is uncoated, the whole length of the needle is uncoated, and a larger amount of the current is required to stimulate a nerve. Here, the only bevel is uncoated, and a very lesser amount of current is required to stimulate a nerve. Here, the only tip is uncoated, whereas the whole length is coated, and so it requires a less amount of the nerve to stimulate less amount of the current to stimulate a nerve. Coming on to the continuous catheter assemblies, and they help with titration of the medication in small dose IVs. Now there are two catheters, that is catheter through needle and catheter over needle. The advantage of catheter over needle is once the needle is after the insertion, once the needle is withdrawn, there is a tight seal which forms around the catheter. Whereas for the catheter through needle, the space will be created after the needle is withdrawn, and there will be a potential leakage around the insertion site. So these are the equipments for the continuous peripheral nerve block. Coming on to the injection pressure monitoring. So here a disposable manometer for the objective monitoring of the injection pressure is done during the administration of the peripheral nerve block. So basically, it shows with higher injection pressure, we might go inside the nerve, and with the lower injection pressure, the there will be an appropriate injection around the vicinity of the nerve. So here you can see in the picture, there is an extraneural needle placement which is associated with low injection pressure less than 15 psi. And here in the picture, there is an intrafascicular needle injection, where the injection pressures are associated with high pressure, that is of more than 15. The opening injection pressure is more than 15 psi. So this will cause the damage to the nerve, and it's mainly because of the bleaching into the perineurium, and it interferes with the endoneural circulation and chemical injury from the neurotoxicity of the local anesthetic. Now coming on to the advantages, if the PNS used along with the ultrasound, then PNS becomes a primary tool. Now it allows the operator to get alert whether the needle might be in the inside the nerve or not, because sometimes the structures are not visible in the ultrasound. So while if we use PNS along with the ultrasound, we may prevent the needle going inside the nerve and prevent the injury to the patient. Now while using an ultrasound, this is a flow chart of PNS along with the ultrasound. Once the needle is connected to the nerve stimulator, this setting is done. So to advance the needle towards the nerve or the plexus, the needle is adequately placed and seen on ultrasound. If the twitch is present, you have to reposition the needle in such a way that the node which is present at less than 0.5 milliampere, and you have to inject the drug, and this completes the injection. Now, if the needle placement is not visible on the ultrasound, then still twitch is present, we have to continue as a we have to try visualizing the needle on ultrasound, and again the twitch is present. You have to allow more twitch at less than 0.5 milliampere to complete the injection. But if no twitch is present and no visibility of the needle on ultrasound, then we have to increase the current to 1.5 milliampere and adjust the needle in such a way that we have to visualize the needle on ultrasound. Here, once the needle is visualized, there is no need for the no need to look for the twitch, and we have to inject the drug and complete the injection. And the injection pressure should be less than 15 psi. Now, there are some machines which have a disconnected malfunction alarms. That means that is used here. Some nerve stimulators have a change in tone or light to warn the circuit whether it is complete or not. So here they have taken an example of guiding the peripheral nerve stimulator using an insulated needle with an uninsulated tip inside the tracheal lumen. So as you can see here, when the needle tip is touching the trachea, it is completing the circuit. Whereas here the needle has crossed the airway lumen, as now it's inside the trachea, where it shows the circuit is incomplete. In the third picture, the needle is touching the airway lumen and the drug is injected, which showing with a green signal that the circuit is complete. Now, another advantage is that peripheral nerve stimulator is as transcutaneous nerve mapping. Now, here the nerve mapping pens are used to locate the superficial nerve up to the depth of 3 centimeters before the needle is being inserted for the nerve block. Now, it helps in identifying the best site for the needle insertion. If there is a difficult anatomy or where the landmarks are difficult to identify, it also helps in reaching the surface anatomy. So here it requires a longer pulse duration of 1 millisecond and current of 45 milliamps. The electrode tip should be an atraumatic and ball-shaped needle, and the conductive tip diameter should not be less than 3 mm. As if it is more than that, there will be difficult. It will not provide sufficient current and also difficulty in spatial distribution. Now there are different commercially available nerve mapping PNS. Now, while performing the transcutaneous stimulation, because of the stimulation of the sensory cells, the patient might feel tingling, pinprick, or even slight burning sensation. Now, another advantages of PNS is a percutaneous electrode primacy. Sometimes it's difficult to mark the anatomic landmarks because the patient will be. So, for such reasons, to determine the exact location of the nerve before insertion of the needle, there are techniques like the transcutaneous and percutaneous nerve stimulation, which has been introduced recently. So here they combine the transcutaneous nerve stimulation along with a nerve stimulator to locate the underlying nerve by passing the electrode over the landmark that are difficult to differentiate. Like for example, it might be the interscalene wound during the brachial plexus block. Here the small imaging device is mounted and locked onto the lower block needle, and this will allow the conducting needle to pass through the skin without any scratching. And once the best response is obtained, the needle is advanced through the skin and the remaining apparatus will stabilize the needle and guide it towards the target. Now this allows the operator to make, this allows for the pre-location of the target now prior to the skin function. Then we have the sequential electrical nerve stimulation. So it incorporates an additional stimulus to the longer pulse duration after two regular impulses at 0.1 to 0.1 millisecond. We get 3 hertz frequency, 3 hertz stimulation frequency. Here, as you can see in the picture, the third longer impulse will deliver more charge than the first two, and this will help reaching the nerve faster. So ultimately, an evoked motor response is often elicited at 1 hertz even when the needle is distant from the nerve. So once the needle is positioned closer to the nerve, the muscle twitches are seen at 3 hertz. So as you can see in the picture, increasing the pulse duration to 0.3 millisecond or 1 millisecond, there is increase in the calibrated area under the curve. That means it represents the larger amount of the electrons for the same current applied. So the larger pulse durations will result in increased ability to stimulate the nerve at a distance or through the skin without the patient discomfort. Here you can see at a fixed current the number of the twitches per second. That is, here is 1 twitch, here 2 twitch, and here 3 twitches per second. This is because of the longer stimulus, that is of 1 millisecond, a motor response at a greater distance than those of the shorter pulse duration of 1.1 milliseconds. So as you can see here, it will produce 3 twitches. Coming on to the Raj test, it is the injection of local anesthetic or the normal saline, which will prevent the motor response, but not by the injection of the dextrose. Now, this is mainly because normal saline is a conducting fluid, and it not only disperses the current, but it also dissociates the fluid into a positive and negatively charged ion. So, this ionic curtain will not allow the current to flow through the nerve. So, we should use 5% dextrose, which is a non-conducting fluid. Now, what are the disadvantages of peripheral nerve stimulator? Now, if we are using peripheral nerve stimulator, it's not reliable in patients who has been given muscular depolarizing or polarizing muscle relaxant, and multiple injections while performing a block will decrease the sensitivity because of the partial nerve blockade in between the injections. And there's always a need of additional equipment, that is a nerve stimulator and stimulating tools. And they always provide an indirect evidence of the nerve location, that the nerve stimulator may not detect a needle to nerve contact with 100% sensitivity. Now, the occurrence of a motor response at a current intensity of less than 0.5 milliampere can serve as an indicator of needle nerve contact or intraneedle needle placement. Although this response may not be present even with the intraneedle needle position, so it has a low sensitivity. But its presence is always indicative of intraneedle needle placement, which has a high specificity. So ultimately, we should use a high quality of PNS with a constant current source in input with low impedance. An insulated needle should be used for the injection with no insulation at the tip. Starting current should be 1 to 1.5 milliampere. With ultrasound, it should be 0.5 milliampere. The ending current should be less than 0.5 milliampere. whereas the low intensity current up to 5 milliampere and short pulse width of 0.05 to 1 milliampere, 1 millisecond, and frequency of 1 to 2 hertz. The injection of LA should be with not less than 15 psi and less than 0.2 milliampere. That is the intensity of if there is muscle push at less than 0.2 milliampere, then it indicates the needle is inside. Thank you.
Ivani, can you come online? Okay, thanks for the talk. Just a couple of things.
So,
yeah, how often do you use the nerve stimulator in your practice right now in your fellowship?
so very less. I think till now, I have used once or twice. That also, sir, along with the ultrasound machine.
Okay. What was the reference for your talks? I mean, the content of your talk, what was your reference? A lot seem to have come from one page in Nysora.
Yes, sir. Sir, I have referred Nysora journals, Hadzik textbook, and there's one more book by Dr. Hadzik's Dual Monitoring, and some online Wikipedia sites and other journals.
Okay, Wikipedia, no, never. All right. Please make that a part of your practice. We are all scientists. We need to go into the core of journals. Wikipedia, we do not know who is writing it. All right. So Wikipedia should never be the source. Even if you do take something from it, please do not ever mention it. It is absolutely something that you cannot mention at any scientific forum. All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now you showed that surface nerve mapper, right? What is the kind of voltages that you expect to use in a surface nerve locator?
The current intensity?
Yes.
Sir, 2 to 3 milliampere current.
Okay. Have you ever used one of these before?
So only once. That also during my MD time, sir.
Yeah. Are you able to use it with a conventional nerve stimulator?
Yes, sir. There are some peripheral nerve stimulators which already have a separate wiring for the nerve mapper.
It is not the wiring that is important there. It is the ability to reach the voltages. Since it is transcutaneous, your minimum voltage setting will be somewhere around 5. And most of the nerve locators max out at 5. So you need a specialized, stimulator, specialized unit to generate that sort of voltage. So 5 is your minimum starting current for those. You also mentioned that, yeah, I'll just ask you an arbitrary question. What is the gauge of a nerve block needle?
So for the, it should be 21 to 22 gauge.
Okay, which one is 21? Which one is 22? What length is 21? What length is 22?
So 21 gauge needle will come in both sizes, like of 100 mm size and 50 mm sizes. 50 mm length, sorry.
Okay.
150 mm length.
Okay, you mentioned that the resistance is more with a 50 millimeter needle as compared to a 100 millimeter needle. Correct? You mentioned that in one of your slides.
Yes, sir.
Why do you think that happens?
So if the needle is if you are using for the deep blocks, if you are using a longer needle with a shorter gauge, with smaller gauge, then the resistance will be more. So it depends upon the gauge of the needle for the deeper blocks. So instead of using a shorter gauge, you have to use a longer gauge for such deep blocks while using a long needle of 100 mm, from 100 to 120 or 140 mm. because of the pressure required to aspirate from the to aspirate the drug or to check will be very high as compared when we are using like a larger gauge needle. So
The pressure to inject will be more with a larger gauge or less with a larger gauge?
it will be less with the larger gauge.
Okay. Okay. So you also showed that little pressure sensing device.
Yes,
uh,
sir. Opening
so-
injection pressure sensing
so
device.
where should your needle be in the nerve to generate a high pressure?
So it should be inside the epineurum.
Okay, the nerve is actually a very big place. It's a very big and it's a very diverse place. So now that you mentioned epineurum, can you tell me what exactly is the epineurum?
So it is a layer which surrounds the peripheral nerve. It is the outermost layer which surrounds the peripheral nerve.
Okay, so you're saying the needle should be beyond the epineurum.
Yes, sir. It should not be inside the epineurum.
No, if we are saying that we are looking at what generates a high pressure. So you're saying that it is inside the epineurum, that is inside the substance of the nerve. Now, inside the substance of the nerve, there are fascicles, there is interfascicular spaces, there are tiny little blood vessels. So where exactly inside the nerve should the needle be to generate a high pressure?
Sir, it should be inside the fascicles.
Okay. What if it is between two fascicles? Will there be a high
Mm.
pressure?
So the low pressure is mainly because of the adipose tissue present in between uh, the myelin sheath and the epineurum layer. So that the pressure while giving the injection is reduced because of the presence of the adipose tissue, which again forms another layer that is paraneurium.
No. Don't go all around with the answer. My question is very simple. I want a straightforward answer to it. If your needle is between two fascicles in the interfascicular tissue, will you have a high pressure or a normal pressure injection?
Sir, I'll have a high pressure while injecting the drug.
Okay, so you just mentioned adipose tissue, which is the one of the connective tissues between fascicles. Now, this usually does not generate a high pressure. It will generate an
Yes, sir.
almost a normal pressure-like scenario. Your
Normal
pressures
pressure.
are going to be high only when the needle abuts into the substance of the fascicle. Okay, and don't bring myelin sheath and all into the answer. You are taking the conversation to another place where it is going to get very difficult for you. Usually, when you are asked a question, just reply to the point. The more you talk, the more ideas you give somebody questioning you. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So I leave it to the others to ask their questions. Pritesh.
Yeah. Shivani,
Yes, sir.
there are few things which I just want to point out in your talk. First of all, did you listen to your recorded version?
Yes, sir.
Did you find any fault in that?
Yes, sir. There were many mistakes.
No. What was the mistake? The basic mistake. What was the basic mistake?
Sir, once in the middle, instead of saying current intensity, I have used
no,
pulse width.
no issue. That doesn't matter much. Your volume, you were not very much audible.
Hello.
You were not very much audible.
Sorry, sir. I'm not able to hear you.
You were not very much audible.
Yes, sir. I got to know now.
So
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
So that was one of the basic problem. Okay. Now, have you used that Sensi, what you talked about Sensi? Do you have the machine which has got a Sensi option in it?
No, sir.
Okay. So what is the advantage of a Sensi? What extra advantage Sensi gives to your normal normal PNS machine. There are only one machine which has got a Sensi, that's a B Brown one. So what is the difference between the PNS machine which you have and a PNS machine with a Sensi? What extra advantage does it give?
So when we use a normal conventional PNS machine, while doing a nerve block, when the needle is going towards the nerve, sometimes we lost the trajectory of the needle, so we won't get the proper twitch at that particular current. Hello.
Yeah, please tell me.
And so while using sense, because of the longer pulse duration, that is from 0.1 to 0.3 and 0.3 to 1 millisecond, during that particular pulse width, a larger amount of the flow of the electrons is there. So while performing a sense, even when we are away from the nerve, we get the muscle twitches.
Okay. So that while movement, you don't move your needle blindly, right?
Yes,
That's
sir.
the advantage.
We get
of
only
sense.
towards the nerve. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you talked about chronoaxis. What is the advantage? Why chronoaxis is important in a regional anesthesia in PNS guided blocks?
Sorry, sir. I did not.
What
Sorry, sir.
I told you talked about chronoaxis, right?
Yes, sir. Chronaxi. Yes, sir.
So what is the advantage? What is the advantage to our patients of chronoaxis? What advantage they get?
So based on the chronaxi, like for different fibers will have different chronaxi. So any fiber which has a shorter chronaxi, we can easily stimulate the nerve with a low amplitude current or a small amount of the current. Again, if the chronaxi for that particular nerve, if fiber will be very high, then it will be very difficult to stimulate a nerve with that particular range of the current. So we have to increase the current amplitude to a higher range.
So what is the advantage to the patient?
Sir, the advantage while performing a nerve block, if we increase the current, it will be causing pain and discomfort. So instead of stimulating the motor fibers, so we might stimulate the sensory fibers. So patient might feel pain during the nerve block.
So basically, this chronoaxis, it helps in giving a block without causing much pain and discomfort to your patients, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Ram, you want to ask some questions?
Yeah. Shivani, the presentation was very good. Thank you
sir.
for you told that the PNS can't be used under general anesthesia with muscle relaxation, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now my question is, can you use PNS after giving the spinal anesthetic?
Yes, sir. We can use, sir.
Okay, why we can use? How it will?
Sir, okay, sir. Sir, in spinal anesthesia, we are just blocking the motor and the sensory part of the particular nerve roots. Here, the neuromuscular junction is absolutely intact. Whereas in general anesthesia, we are giving the muscle relaxants. So all the acetylcholine receptors are bounded with the drug itself. So normally, sir, in a body, we have a impulse generation. That is, the node will jump from one node to from one node to the one node of annulus to the another. Because of the solitary conduction, we get an impulse generation. The same thing is occurring from outside. We are giving an impulse from outside. So the muscle fiber is responding to it, and sorry, the nerve is responding to it, and we are getting a stimulation of the muscle, that particular muscle fiber.
Fine. The simple answer is
But that's not in
blockade.
case of the general anesthesia, sir.
Fine. So blockade is in the path of the stimuli, in the path of the current flow, isn't it?
Current flow, yes, sir.
Okay. Can you name some clinical conditions where it's very difficult to use a PNS? Clinical conditions where it's difficult to elicit a response.
In diabetic patients, sir.
Yeah, fine. Good. In any other conditions?
So polyneuropathy, any radiculopathy cases. So already patient is having a like neuropathy.
Okay, fine. Can you do a PNS guided block in a multiple tendon injury patient? Patient is having multiple tendon injury. Patient has come for tendon repair now. So can you do a PNS guided block?
Sir, we'll be facing difficulty while performing the block in such patients.
Why? What difficulty you face?
Sir, the nerve endings might have got damaged there. So
No,
if we
tendon
want to
injury. I'm
perform the
talking
block,
about. See, in tendon injury, what happens when you stimulate a nerve, you won't be getting a response, isn't it? Tendons are ruptured there. You won't be getting the proper response, flexion or extension, isn't it? So you will not be able to get a response, isn't it? So similarly, with the extensive muscle damage, crush injury, with extensive muscle damage, or even open fracture where the bones are, just exteriorized, the muscle anatomy is not proper. Even in such cases also, even if you stimulate a nerve properly, you may not be able to get a response, isn't it?
okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. How will you do a penis guided block in an amputated limb? Patient is having a BK amputation. Now you want to do a sciatic nerve block. How will you do?
Mm,
You observed it 2 days back only, sacral plexus block, Shivani.
yes, sir. Mm. Sir, in such patients, we'll go for a subgluteal approach for the block.
Which response you are
Sorry,
looking
sir.
for? Which response you are looking for in the
Mm. No, sir, I have no idea.
What is left there? What muscles are left now? Calf is not there. Foot is not
Yes,
there.
sir.
What is left now?
So we have all those like the hamstring muscles and the vastus
Fine.
lateralis.
Yeah, to look. Okay, fine. So can you use a PNS in a patient who has a pacemaker? You did not touch that topic. That's very important topic. We are using electrical device. We blame the surgeons for using the diathermy in a pacemaker patient, but now we are using an electrical device for our nerve block in a patient with pacemaker. So what are your strategy for using a pacemaker for using a nerve stimulator in a pacemaker patient?
Sir, we should not attach the needle, the patient and the anode part in the direction of the pacemaker, the pathway of the pacemaker, because in the
Can you do
pathway
a
of the
lower
pacemaker.
limb? Can you do a lower limb block more safely, or an upper limb block more safely in a patient with pacemaker?
Sir, lower limb block more safely as compared to the upper limb block.
Why?
Uh, Sir, I don't know the exact reason, but the current might travel through that pathway of the pacemaker.
Yeah, lower limb, you are quite away from the pacemaker, isn't it? It's a very
Yes, sir.
simple thing. Your whole circuit is quite away from the pacemaker. The chances of electromagnetic interference is quite less, isn't it? So if you have to do a upper limb block, so what you want to do? What changes you want to make in the pacemaker? Any idea?
Mm,
So how much current you want to use in a patient with pacemaker? You start with 1 ampere, 1 milliampere, or 1.5. How much you want to use? What should be your frequency? What should be your pulse width?
mm.
Okay. In a pacemaker patient, you have to use a very short pulse duration of 0.1 second, not more than that. And you should be using a current of 0.5, not more than that. Okay. Because anything more than 0.5, chances of electromagnetic interference is high. And at the same time, your frequency should be very less, 1 hertz. Even some articles say you have to use less than 1 hertz frequency, 0.5 hertz frequency. I don't know whether it is there in any of the PNS device, but less than 1 hertz frequency. Because when you stimulate with higher frequency, the pacemaker will sense that this electromagnetic, whatever the impulse is, the pacemaker will think that it's coming from the heart. So what will happen? It will inhibit itself. It will not deliver any impulse to the heart. So patient can go for bradycardia or even asystole. The patient is highly dependent on the pacemaker. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, that's very important.
Yeah, to basically, if the patient has a pacemaker, it's better if you have an option of ultrasound, go for ultrasound.
Better avoid.
Blocks.
Better avoid it. Better
Yeah.
avoid. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And another important thing here, what is the threshold for threshold current for microshock in a patient? This is quite little bit tough question, but still you are.
My, in
So
microshocks,
how much current is needed to induce a ventricular fibrillation in a patient? Because you're using an electrical device, right?
yes, sir.
You're doing an upper limb block. It can reach the heart and it can cause some electrical arrhythmias, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So 100 microamperes can induce, directly applied to the heart, can induce ventricular fibrillation. Okay, but since we are using a transcutaneous or percutaneous needle, the chances are rare. Okay, but still it can theoretically happen. Okay, in what conditions?
Yes,
When the
sir.
patient is having a central line or a PA catheter, and you're doing a block on that side, your whatever current, it can transmit directly to the heart through the conduit, central venous catheter. Okay, so that
Okay,
can
sir.
cause, or if the patient is having pacing wires, transcutaneous pacing wires, okay, so it can deliver the whatever current directly to the heart without any resistance from the skin or the thoracic wall. So it can cause arrhythmias or even ventricular fibrillation. Okay, you have to be very, very careful when the patient is having central line or any PA catheter or dialysis catheter, because directly goes into the heart. Whatever current you do, for example, you're doing a interscalene or supraclavicular plexus block in a patient who is having a IJV or a subclavian catheter. So the current can directly go into the heart and can cause arrhythmias. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
these are all some of the electrical safety things you have to keep in mind. And another important thing is to convert the pacemaker to a asynchronous mode. Okay, for all the surgeries above the level of umbilicus, the pacemaker has to be converted to asynchronous mode. What is asynchronous mode? Hello.
Hello,
David.
What is
sir. The
asynchronous mode? Is only pacing. It doesn't senses. Okay.
it doesn't. It will not sense the patient's
Yeah.
the rate of the heart.
Yeah, the code is VOO or DOO. Okay, so it only
Yes, sir.
paces. It will not sense any electromagnetic disturbance. So that's the safest mode you can use. Okay, so these are all some of the safety things you have to keep in mind while using PNS in a pacemaker.
Okay, Shivani, it was really nice. You are well prepared. It was a good presentation. Next time onwards, when you are presenting, just check your audio. Okay.
Ritesh, I will.
Ritesh,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Ritesh,
I just have,
Yes.
Hello.
Ritesh, I
please,
just
please.
have, can I just add a word, this is Dr. Ramkumar here.
Yeah, Ramkumar, please.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is not particularly for this block or technique. I just like to add, when we should look into contraindications, basically. I mean, there was some mention of neuropathies and all those autoimmune diseases and motor neuron diseases and, all the contraindications before giving a block. Okay. We should be cautious. And also, as Dr. Ramurthy was telling, I think we should not forget the, to look at the general conditions, whenever we are doing. If there's any contraindications or if the general conditions doesn't allow one technique, we should substitute or add another technique like ultrasound with a needle or with a peripheral nervous system. That's what I wanted to tell. That answers most of the controversies. Yeah, thanks.
Ritesh, I will upload the presentation on YouTube. Basically,
Yeah,
it was through my laptop. That's why sound might be low. But I will upload on the YouTube our Aura channel so that anyone can hear it again.
Yeah. Yeah, Amit bhai, you want to ask?
Yes.
Yeah, please come in.
Yeah.
You look great.
Thank you.
Yeah, please. Yeah, Amit.
Very nice presentation, Shivani.
Thank you,
I
sir.
would like to start. I have few questions which are very exam-oriented questions. All examiners are fond of it. First question, which most of the examiners would like to ask is like, you have two connections, one red and another black. If I interchange the connection, that is not possible with present day system, but previously with olden days, the lead ko black laga diya and red goes to needle. So what do you think?
Yes, sir.
What is the implication?
So if we use a positive electrode, that is the anode, if it is connected to the needle, then the current required to the amplitude of the current which is required to stimulate nerves will be much higher than what we used for the instead of using a cathode.
Correct.
So that might stimulate the sensory fibers rather than the motor fibers, and patient will end up having more pain and discomfort.
So how much more? How much more?
So 1.5 to 2 milliampere is mainly for the sensory fibers.
Yeah, usually whatever response you are getting otherwise, roughly it takes 3 times. So 3 times more current is required. Okay. Another simple question is already you have covered, but just to start with, what is Raj test you said? What is Raj test?
Sir, it is initially by mistake if if the operator might have injected local anesthetic, or if we have used a normal saline injection, while using a peripheral nerve stimulator, the patient won't have a motor response. Because while using that normal saline,
Yes.
hello,
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
please, please.
Yes.
it is one of the
Yeah.
it's a conducting fluid, so it will form and curtain the iron of curtain, and it will not allow the impulse to pass through it and produce a motor response. So instead of using normal saline, the one should use 5% dextrose, which is one of the non-conducting fluid.
If I am using 5% dextrose, it is known with some of, what is the name of that test?
What, sir?
If I am using 5% dextrose,
Yes, sir.
you know, there is another test for it. Are you aware of that test? Have you heard of Sui's test? Sui test.
Yes, sir. Yes, I've heard of Sui test.
What is that Sui test?
So it is done to know the placement of the epidural catheters in the correct places. It was described by Dr. Sui.
Yes, that is Sui's epidural test. Yes. Okay, you want to
Yes,
start?
sir.
Could you tell me what are the current arrangements? What current? How you do epidural Sui test?
Mm. So I don't know the current settings, but we use a Johann adapter attached separately to the a separate wire-based epidural catheter.
No, no.
I don't know the settings, sir.
Usually, where you use Sui test most commonly in our day-to-day practice?
For labor analgesia patients. For labor analgesia.
Caudal epidural. I think sometimes you may see those videos with Dr. Vrushali Ponde, where she uses regular Stimuplex needle in a caudal block, and current settings are 1 to 10 milliampere current. So we look for twitch, and if the perianal twitch, and if we are getting twitch at less than 1 milliampere current, probably we are intrathecal. So to differentiate between intrathecal,
Yes.
but I'm talking of 5% dextrose, that is also known as Sui test. So exaggeration of motor response induced with a low current of 0.5 milliampere or so, when we are following an injection of 5% dextrose, this is Sui test. So we are discussing about Raj and Sui. Can you tell me something about Raj? What is his contribution to regional anesthesia? Raj, have you heard his name before? What is Raj?
So his name was Dr. Prithviraj,
Yes, yes.
sir, and so I know that he has a book on pain.
In regular routine PNS blocks, any block is named after him.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So I could
I
not
think,
remember.
once you complete your, there is sciatic Raj approach, and you will. So, all right. So you have showed those injection pressure device, and its utility. Suppose you do not have it, then can you utilize that technique? Is there any other way out for doing it?
So one of the technique is one person should hold the needle and the other person should inject the drug. So that is one of the way that we can reduce the amount of the pressure while giving the injection.
Okay, no. I
Suppose
suggest you-
suppose I give this syringe. Suppose I give this syringe to my OT assistant. Will it be a nice idea?
No, sir. Uh, an, a- an anesthesiologist only should give the injection.
Have
Who
you?
knows? Yeah.
Yeah, this is one. Have you heard about this original paper from Dr. Sui again? Are you aware of this?
Yes, it is based on the Boyle's law.
Yes.
So at the constant temperature, the volume is inversely proportional to the pressure. So we have to aspirate the air above the level of the injection inside the syringe.
So you have to take around say 10 ml of local anesthetic, 10 ml of air, and once you compress it to 5 ml, the injection pressure is around 1 atmospheric pressure, which is 14.7
Yes, sir.
psi. So this is a compression air injection technique by Sui et al.
The injection.
And it has discussed. So even if you develop this habit, like in a 10 cc syringe, if you take only 5 ml of drug and remaining 5 ml, if you compress it to half, do not allow the air getting compressed too much because you are generating then more pressure. So this is another way of you may try this. And this was again, so one can ask you what is the contribution of Sui in regional anesthesia? Just offhand, who is father of regional anesthesia? No, that's a homework. Okay, I mean, okay. Now I know other faculties are also waiting, so I'll not take more time. Now you said that you hardly use PNS in your day-to-day practice. So as a regional anesthetist, I am asking your opinion. So I can ask you, because once you move out of this program, you will be known as a fellow in regional anesthesia. So people would like to know your opinion. So what do you think is the present day status of peripheral nerve use of PNS in regional anesthesia when we have ultrasound readily available?
Sir, in my opinion, even if there is presence of ultrasound, one should use or should know how to use PNS, because sir, in some places where ultrasound is not present, we
No,
can
no.
give
Suppose
blocks on.
suppose ultrasound is present. Do you think that there is still role of PNS?
Yes, sir. There is a role of
What is the
PNS.
role? What is the role of PNS?
So sometimes the anatomy might not be that clear on the ultrasound, or we might not be able to visualize the proper structures on the ultrasound. So PNS can be used as a guide or the primary tool while performing the blocks along with the ultrasound. So that is a part of a dual monitoring.
Have you seen Hetelsal using PNS? Surely
Yes,
for
sir.
some blocks, I mean for upper limb blocks, some may not use, but there are some blocks where everyone would like to use PNS. What are those blocks?
So for the sciatic nerve block, and so recently we also used in serratus anterior plane block too.
Yes.
Just
All right. So
and
yes, that's so. What you did with serratus anterior plane block?
uh, sir, once we had confirmed on ultrasound, and while introducing the needle was connected to the peripheral nerve stimulator. So first, initially, sir, I have used PNS, and then I confirmed the drug spread over the ultrasound.
Yes. All right. So I think when it comes to lumbar plexus, sacral plexus, sciatic block, we would probably like to continue to use PNS along with ultrasound. Also, there is increased interest even with interfacial plane block like PEX block. You mentioned serratus anterior plane block, or even TAP block, where we can have ilioinguinal, iliohypogastric. So wherever there is nerve, we are always interested in stimulating it. And last question, if you are doing a pure sensory block, what is the role of PNS? Say
Mm.
adductor canal block or lateral
Uh,
femoral nerve block.
yeah, and saphenous nerve blocks. So we have to use a very So we can use PNS for the like except for the sensory blocks. We have to use very high amount of the current to get such blocks, and even the duration, the pulse width duration also would be high as compared to as compared for the motor fibers block.
Yeah, Hetal, you have any comment on this? Anything?
Yeah, I think I discussed with Shivani. She asked me this question only. So why you are using 0.1 millisecond or 0.3 millisecond or 1 millisecond? Now you can answer the question. I'm giving you hint. You asked this question few days back.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember?
Yes, sir, yes. So, because of the shorter chronaxy, we anyways require lesser pulse width duration for the motor fibers, but for the sensory fibers, we require more.
I think she is confused.
So you can explain, Hetal. No problem.
Yeah, so basically for stimulating a motor fiber, you require 0.1 millisecond of current. If you increase to 1 millisecond, then you can stimulate the sensory fiber also. Patient will have tingling and numbness while you locate the nerve, and you can ask the patient whether there is any tingling and numbness, and you can inject the drug. I think Ritesh has done the study for saphenous nerve block, isn't it, Ritesh?
Yeah, but basically what we did, it was not the only, we looked for the contraction of vastus medialis. So it was not the exactly the location of the saphenous nerve in PNS guided adductor canal. Basically, we went for the contraction of the, we stimulated the nerve to vastus medialis and we injected. It was, we didn't targeted the saphenous nerve. Basically for sensory nerves, if you use PNS, it is quite, you have to use a very longer duration of current and a high current. So obviously it will be quite painful for the patients. So to be very frank, I will not recommend for a sensory nerve use of PNS because it will be quite painful for the patients. And if you suppose for saphenous nerve, if you want to go at the level of adductor canal, and if you are using such a high current, you will have, if the nerve to vastus medialis is in the adductor canal, you will have the contraction of adductor canal, vastus medialis muscle earlier. So obviously you will not be able to locate the paresthesia of the saphenous nerve. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So, and for LFCN, if you are trying to use a PNS to locate a saphenous LFCN, it will be quite painful for the patients. So it's better go for a landmark guided approach to, if you are only blocking the LFCN or a saphenous nerve, if you want only saphenous nerve, don't use PNS. It's better to go for a landmark guided approach. It will be quite pleasing for the patients. Also, it will have more comfortable. It will be more comfortable to the patients.
Yeah, last question I'll ask. You have, Shivani, nicely covered everything. There was one chapter on sequential brachial plexus block in older edition of Hadzik. That was first edition. Now they have removed that. So sequential brachial plexus block with use of PNS, I think it requires a lot of dexterity to get one twitch, then other twitch, and then third twitch, and keep on injecting small aliquots of local anesthetic. So there can be one question on what are advantages and disadvantages of multi-stimulation technique, which I think there was one slide. The last question was, I think, okay, I just forgot about the sequential, or anyways, I think anyone else other can ask, no problem.
Shivani, a nice presentation, very well faced the bombardment of questions from all the faculties, really nice. Now come, I will just target the random fellows. Nita.
Ritesh,
Nita,
can I just have a clarification? Did
Yeah,
we
yeah,
cover stimulating catheters? Did we cover that in the talk? If I missed in the beginning, stimulating catheters.
Stimulating catheters. She,
Yeah,
she has, she
she had
has
a few,
covered
one
it.
or two
She had
slide.
one or two slides on
Okay,
stimulating.
But we
there are good papers, and the company the saying we did few of them for the sake of academic interest. I think it's interesting to know, as you stimulate, you can thread in a catheter, particularly in our continuous catheter techniques for when we do a femoral nerve block or whatever. So it'd be useful. I think some people may ask about it. Yeah, just to be aware of. Yeah.
Yeah, why, Ram, why don't you just share those articles in the fellowship
Yeah,
WhatsApp group?
Yeah,
It will
I
be,
had a talk on it some time back. I'll find out
yeah,
and share it.
yeah, you can just share in
yeah,
that
yeah,
so that
yeah.
they can just go
Ritesh,
through it.
Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
Ritesh, Dr.
Yeah, boss.
Neeta is EDRA diplomat and she's co-mentor from my department.
Oh,
So
I'm sorry very much.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
so
I'm sorry. I didn't
I
know
don't
that.
know. You can
Oh,
ask.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, you can ask.
Basant, Dr. Basant,
Yes, sir.
yeah, you have any questions? You can just ask any questions which you want.
Yes, sir. Sir, basically, I was confused in that whether like we can use the PNS for sensory nerves, but as it has already been answered. The second question is that the skin anode that we use. Usually we place it on, if we are using it for the upper limb blocks, we place it on either the same limb or the chest or anywhere. So I wanted to know the ideal length or ideal distance from the negative cathode where we can usually place it.
Basically, earlier it was that you should place in the course of the nerve, but right now, anywhere you place it doesn't matter.
You have to basically complete the circuit. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter wherever you want to place, you can place.
And sir, in cases of like sir said, in cases of pacemaker, then
pacemaker, as we discussed, in if you have the option of ultrasound, better go for ultrasound guided blocks. If you don't have ultrasound, you want to use a PNS, go for minimum currents, which Ram told. You have to go to 0.5 and a very short duration of current. Okay.
Yes.
Lower limb. But if you have a bipolar pacemaker, then obviously the safety is more compared to unipolar pacemakers. But if you have got ultrasound, for safety recommendation, it's better to go for ultrasound guided blocks. Don't use a PNS.
Yes. So one more question, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, like when we give brachial plexus block, like supraclavicular block, we are basically using PNS guided. We basically block the trunks. Then after blocking, after giving the supraclavicular block, we still get the twitch when we block the nerves around axillary artery. So
you answer that. You answered that. That was discussed right now.
So this was actually I'm confused in this thing. That's why.
No. The principle is same. Okay. After a spinal anesthetic, when you can use a PNS to do a distal nerve block, same.
Yes.
Because you're doing a initial block in the proximal level, and when you go further distally, you can still block. Because the impulse transmission is further distally, because you're stimulating a motor nerve.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yes.
You can still
Any
do
more
a
fellows? Senthil? Dr. Senthil?
Good evening, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah.
Sir, I have a
please.
doubt regarding types of needles, like 17-degree and 30-degree bevel needles, and how they really matter, sir. Like the angulation, is it, we usually worry about the bevel tip, like blended tip needles, but this angle, how the 30-degree makes the bevel more longer, or something related to the degree at which the bevel cut? I don't understand that, sir.
यार ये मेरे लिए बाउंसर है. Ram, over to you. Ram,
Hello, can you?
hello. You are muted, Ram.
Which Ram I'm wondering.
Yeah,
that's why
Dr.
I'm
Ram. Yeah, anybody. It was a bouncer to me. I cannot answer this question.
Can you come again with the question, Senthil?
Hello, sir.
Senthil, yeah,
Yeah, sir.
can you repeat your question?
Yes, sir. Between the types of degree for the bevel needles, like 70 degree, 15 degree, and 30 degree bevel needles they were giving, are they talking about? Sorry, sir.
Hello, we lost you.
Yeah, sorry.
Hello.
Sorry, sir. Sorry, sir. I received a call. Sir, I just wanted to know what is the relationship between the different degree of angle for the bevel and the clinic.
Okay. The question is that what is the relation between the bevel and the clinical implication, right? Right. Okay. It's very simple. Short bevel needle and there are long bevel needle. Short bevel needle are the one which are supposed to be safe. Yeah. The short bevel needles are the one which are supposed to be safe, and again, it's not very well proven. When it comes to a peripheral nerve block, the short bevel needles are supposed to be safe than the long bevel needles, because long bevel needles are quite sharp, and you may not be able to feel the pop of a facial layer or even a paraneurial layer or something like that. So that feel will be very nice. You can elicit that pop with a short bevel needle. Question mark, with a short bevel needle is less compared to a long bevel needle. So that's why always it's preferable to use a short bevel needle. Again, there are not much of evidence in the literature.
No, sir. Short bevel needle means, is it
Conventionally,
like the degree is more? Is the degree is more for the short bevel needle? Like 30
Pardon?
degree for a short bevel needle. What is the degree they say? Like 30 degree, 15 degree, like that. That's what I wanted.
So yes, Senthil,
Yes,
you
sir.
have a hypodermic needle. Hypodermic needle you have seen.
Yes, sir.
So can you tell me what is the angle there?
So that's around 15.
Yes, it is 11 to 14 degrees. So you can actually cut the nerve like a sword. So it can cause a very sharp injury. When you have a short bevel needle, say our routine, what you have, either B bronze, Payang, they have roughly 45 degrees. They are blunt tip, and therefore they are safe. But if you apply a lot of pressure through it, then it can cause a contused lacerated wound, which is even more dangerous than a long bevel needle. But usually in our routine practice, we don't put that much of force. So by and large, for practical purpose, we have to use those blunt tip needles where you have a greater angle. It making yes. So, but
greater the angle, the shorter the bevel.
Yeah, but I'll share you the one more thing. Recently, companies have come up with 5 bevel needle, and this is one of the projection from company, and they have done one study also, and they found that these 5 bevel needle are less painful. So nowadays there are different angulations. You can see this left short photograph of the needle tip. So this is BD proprietary, and 5 bevel needle tip able to penetrate the skin more easily due to its flatter, thinner surface. In tests compared with 3 bevel needle, the BD needle was significantly easier to insert and less painful, with the force needed to penetrate the skin, and it was reduced by 23%. So nowadays, as the technology is advancing, we do not have only one, sharp cut, but there are 5 evil also is possible. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank
Suppose you have Dr. Bala Venkat, who is doing an interscaling block. So nowadays we are in the era of statistics, and now there are numbers. So I think so. My question is, how many interscaling blocks you will have to do? You will have to perform successfully to reach the level of an expert, or reasonably. I mean, you are allowed. Still, you are under training. So, what is that particular number? Are you aware of it? Shivani?
No, sir.
So nowadays there are multiple numbers when it comes to training, teaching, and say for spinal anesthesia, you cannot compare a newly joined resident with that of a final year resident. So they say that around 100 spinals are required, so that then they are comparable when we do thesis and all that. No, so we always talk of these numbers. So for interscaling also, it is the number is 65. So what I'm trying to emphasize is why this PNS guided block has fallen in disrepute is because it is more of a personality dependent technique. I mean, the person should be calm, they should be little with a meditative mood, their hand should be rock stable, they should get good stimulation, and even while injecting, hand should not move. But with ultrasound, what we have found is even 1 hour training is just enough to make a candidate equally efficient in delivering safer anesthesia. So that is why all have moved more or less whenever the facilities are available. What is your opinion about paresthesia? Paresthesia technique, have you heard? What is your opinion?
you. In anatomical approach to supraclavicular, we use walk on the first rib, and while walking on the rib, we usually get a distribution of paresthesia along the course of the upper limb nerves.
I think we have a AORA policy statement more or less, but of course all faculties can share their experience. But by and large, paresthesia is obsolete. We do not wish to elicit that sort of response. Also, it depends on the composition of the nerve, motor and sensory. If it is a more motor, then probably we may not have that paresthesia, and it is barbaric technique. But yes, double pop technique for fascia iliaca, fair enough. So small, still, but we don't elicit paresthesia. But Amjad, anyone, what is opinion about paresthesia? Now we have moved from PNS and now to PNS and dual mode and more towards ultrasound in the safer interest of the patient.
Yeah, I think we should abandon that role. I know that there are a lot of places where even a PNS is a luxury, but in the interest of safety and propagating safe regional anesthesia, I think we should abandon. I think where we can substitute landmark guided technique is with local infiltration analgesia, where you can ask the surgeon to infiltrate a large volume of dilute local anesthetic into the operated area. I think this is a safer substitute. We must remember that and I always say this, that the local anesthetic is the hero of all that we do. And the blocks that we do probably come a close second, but the usage of local anesthetic in any surgical technique, any surgery is of paramount importance. Whether you give it as a nerve block with the PNS or ultrasound, if you can do it, well and good, it keeps you involved. But if you are unable to do that, good infiltration by the surgeon also is probably a substitute that we should be considering to use in today's practice.
I can just add few words on this paresthesia technique. As a trainee, we have done few paresthesia techniques, particularly for, Am I audible? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir,
Hello?
you are audible. Audible. You are audible.
You are audible. Hello, I think we have lost him. I think it's already 1 hour 45
Yeah.
minutes.
I
Yes.
think Shivani, congratulations for probably having the most chatty fellowship class ever.
Exactly.
It has
Well,
really put out a lot of interaction.
Exactly. And you face the bombardments very nicely. Great.
Yes.
Okay. Chalo. And,
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Sir, this is Basant. Sir, I wanted to know, sir, few minutes ago, Dr. Amit sir has said that they used, means like Shivani has also said that they use it for a SAP block also, serratus anterior plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir, that is basically an interfacial plane block. So we give, we deposit the drug in the interfacial plane because we don't usually see the nerves, but we know that the nerves is there in the neurovascular plane.
Which nerve runs in that plane, Basant?
Sir, there are two, sir. One is thoracodorsal nerve and long thoracic nerve.
So we are not stimulating the intercostal nerves. We are, since the two nerves, the long thoracic nerve and thoracodorsal nerve runs in that plane, we see the stimulation of the serratus anterior muscle. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And
So, but
please tell me. Yeah.
Do we need to change the settings? Like, do we need to give some higher current or more frequency?
No, it is the same as a other PNS guided nerve block.
Yeah.
You will bring the current down to 0.5.
Correct.
Okay. You start with the initial current of 1, come down to a current of around 0.4 to 0.5. If you are seeing the contraction of the serratus anterior muscle, you inject the drug. And since the intercostal nerve runs in that plane, once you are depositing the drug, the lateral cutaneous branch will be blocked.
See, the interfacial plane blocks, let me make it clear. The discovery of interfacial plane block was possible only with ultrasound. It was not there with PNS era. Now, interfacial plane blocks, ultrasound has role. And nowadays we are using at times to demonstrate to our fellows PNS in between. Wherever you find nerve, you can stimulate it. Say for doing a PEX block, you identify a vessel, pectoral branch of thoracoacromial artery, and thereby just by the side, you think that this is nerve, let us stimulate it just for confirmation. As far, I mean, if a standard answer is required, there is no role that's as such that you should use PNS in all interfacial plane blocks. It is just out of interest, you can do it. Interfacial plane blocks are very well done with ultrasound alone. All right.
Okay.
I think we'll
guys,
call it
let us end this. This
Yes.
is going to go on.
Thank you.
Now,
you.
there is one question which from Jagdish, which I'm going to post into the Aora Fellowship group. If somebody, mentors, please be kind enough to answer that so that we don't miss out on these questions.
Yeah.
Any more doubts, please post the questions in the fellowship group so that we have all week and weekend to answer it for you and nothing goes missed.
Yeah.
Ritesh, shall we close?
Yeah. Dr. Neeta, I'm sorry. Amit मेरे तरफ से sorry बोल देना. I'm sorry.
नहीं कुछ नहीं. I am happy to see, you know, she is very much pro regional and enthusiastic.
I will participate more in the next session probably.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I am sorry.
That's perfectly all right.
Okay.
No, you don't need to be sorry. Nice discussion.
Okay. Chalo. Thank you. Chalo, take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you, Shivani.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Amjad.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Chalo, bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.